Today I'm going to be painting this waterfall mountain kind of scene, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing as I go along. So I've already started with the mountain, and for you who've seen this kind of painting from me before, you'll know I start without using brushes. I'm using the select tool with color fill, and it makes it easier to do big shapes and not worry too much about the detail or the colors, because you just got one big color. And you notice I just put the the backside of the rocks there. One thing you want to make sure is you just go dark to begin with, because you'll see as we go I'm going to be lightening it up. So for that rock in particular, I picked a purple. I don't know why, because it's not purple whatsoever. So you'll see that it doesn't really matter early on what color you use, as long as you recognize that it needs to change throughout the painting. And it's good just to get something in. It's much easier to fix things than it is to, worry and get it perfect straight away. I never can do that anyway. So now you notice that I've realized that it's really the wrong color. And so I've gone really dark and desaturated. So almost the color doesn't matter because it's so dark that you can't really tell what color it is anyway. But now I've started to lighten it up over the rock layer. And what I'm really trying to do is, once I've got the big shapes in, which there's only, the sky, the mountain, the rocks, the lake in the front, and the big tree. Once I got that in, I need to establish where the light is coming from. So I start to lighten things up, again with the select tool of making big shapes. We can break those shapes up again later, but it's really good tool just to get an idea of where the light is coming from. I'm not going to copy this. This reference photo is quite complicated, and I'm not going to copy it that much, just to give me an idea of what I want to paint. If I worry about copying it exactly, this would take a long time, which is okay if you want to take a long time, but usually I just I like to paint for fun, and anything over like an hour or two for me starts to get a bit grindy. So this took about 45 minutes, I think, overall. So I have the same concept everywhere, is start dark and get lighter and lighter. And I don't worry too much about if I've nailed the colors or the the accuracy of what I'm actually painting, because the references for me, you can see it on the iPad mini there up above, and I generated this with AI, so nobody actually has this reference anyway, or maybe they have something similar, but it's not going to be the same. So it doesn't really make sense to try and nail something that nobody's ever seen before. I mean, I guess if this was a real place, you might want to be more accurate, but for landscape paintings, it's not a big deal. And most of the time, it's just getting the main essence of it, which is mainly the waterfall. And what's really important about this painting, or the reference, and I'd say this for any painting that you're looking at, there's usually one or two major parts to it that make or break it. So what I mean by that is, the major part of this painting is the fact that the sun is coming from the left and not highlighting the entire waterfall part, so you can only see a little bit highlighted, and that'll become more apparent as I go along, and that the rock face is really bright. And once you nail those two, obviously the water, reflections too. So once you nail like those three elements, the rest are not that important. Not to say they can be total rubbish, obviously, but I'm talking over this after I've already painted it, and I know The mountain section in the back is not very good, to be honest. I think I started too light and too blue. I should have spent a bit more time getting the mountain underneath the foliage and trees correct first. It's a learning experience. You never nail everything, and so next time I do something like this, I'll pay attention more to what's underneath the trees and things, because I could have done a better job there. And if I did it in the first instance, it wouldn't have been that difficult. But the problem is I left it too late, and I'd already merged a couple of layers, and the trees are already on top, and it would be quite difficult to fix. So I say, if you do something like that and it's really difficult to fix, I'd say don't fix it, because nobody really cares other than yourself. And you can spend hours and hours trying to fix it, and I don't think it's worth it. Just keep that knowledge and understand that you could do better next time, and I will. And next time I have this mountain, hopefully I'll remember. I'm not saying I will, because the amount of times I've made mistakes and said, "Yep, don't do that again," and actually forgotten is ridiculous. So it's only if you make that mistake 10 times, you'll probably learn it. But just the once off, you might make those mistakes again. So, but anyway, back to what I'm up to is basically the simple process is big shapes, break them up into smaller shapes by adding light to them. So you got to make sure that it's dark enough. Now, what I said earlier is I didn't do this mountain very well at the back. So I'm trying to add dark parts to it. Now you can see is that doesn't really work that well. So it's easier to go from dark to light. When you're trying to add dark amongst the light parts, it's not very good. So I gave it a go, but then I kind of give up. So not every painting is going to work as you hoped. And, to be honest, most of the time my paintings don't end up anywhere like I hoped. But it doesn't really matter. It's a process, and I'm happy to just what does it look like in the end. So I just have fun doing it, and whatever will be at the end is what it is. So this painting is quite complicated, the reference. So if you've seen any of my other videos, I usually do like 1 or 2 levels over the dark, but this one is a little bit more, and I'm using a little hard brush. Doesn't really matter which brush, don't worry about that. Over, because so when I try to use brushes, well, no, I don't try. I definitely use brushes when you need to texture things. So one way to add a bit of realism to anything you're doing is to add texture. Now, what does texture mean in the first place? It means it's not all flat, basically. So you have to add interest. Now, there's multiple ways to do that, but I prefer just to scribble it, basically. And from a distance, that looks like it's very textured. Zoomed in, it looks kind of scribbly. But I don't really care about zoomed in. Zoomed in is just to help me paint. But when you zoom out, if it looks correct, then I'm happy. So one thing to pay attention to with trees, and I made this mistake so many times when I started learning how to paint, was if I wanted something bright, I would pick, so say I wanted one of these trees highlighted, and maybe I didn't highlight these quite enough, but it's fairly close. But I would use like super bright yellow or something, and I was like, I want these brighter. So I'd use this super bright yellow. And you got to keep in mind that trees generally are quite dark, even their highlights. This goes for anything, not just trees, but trees in particular are kind of funny because they're really, especially pine trees, they're really, really dark, and even the highlights are pretty dark. So make sure if you want to highlight a tree that you don't go too light, and it'll look weird. So what you want to do is, if you want to make them look brighter, what you got to do is make the shadow side darker. Right, so make the shadow side really black, but then keep the highlight pretty subtle still. But with everything, when you're trying to paint shadows and highlights, you have to realize there's a limit to how dark and how light everything can be. So even if you want something to be bright, that doesn't mean you can. Yeah, you only get like a certain range. So as long as you stay in, the realistic range, it's not going to look funny. But as soon as you go out of the realistic range that you're allowed to use, it just won't work. Now, those ranges are different depending on what's happening, but really what you can do is change your paint into black and white, and you can see that if something stands out like it's not supposed to be there, then you've gone too far. Let me know in the comments if you want me to do a black and white study and explain what that means. It's all about getting the values correct, which the only way to really do that is to change your paint into black and white, and then you can see if the values are correct. I used to do that a lot early on when I was, again, used to painting, because if you don't do this that much, seeing values is very difficult, especially when you add color to them. So turning your picture to black and white will make it much, much easier to see if you have the values correct. Now, values are probably the most important thing when painting, and especially landscapes. Usually, if you're painting something like a still life or a person or something like that, the values are fairly similar, because values change a lot with distance. So if something is just close, it's not so difficult. But when you have big distances like this, the mountains miles away or whatever, you need to make sure you get those values correct, or the depth will look strange. If it's wrong, things can look like they're floating in the air because the value is too strong, or if it's too weak, it doesn't make any sense. So let me know if you want me to talk more about values, because that is pretty much the most fundamental part of being able to paint these things, and making things black and white is going to make a big difference. Now, you'll notice with this painting, I decided to not follow it so much down the bottom. Like I said, I generated this painting with AI, and AI kind of does some funky things anyway that are not correct, and some of the reflections are not exactly what would happen, and the big tree on the left would I can't say for certain, but I would probably make a big shadow down the bottom. So I decided to do that instead of the weird, I don't know what, like crystal rock things I made. So I decided to make it a little bit different there, and not follow it so much. So to get the water, one thing you want to do with water is make sure it has lots of the environment colors in it. Subtly, not like crazy colors, but what it's doing is kind of reflecting the greens and the rock. So just take those colors and put them in the water somewhere, and you'll have a good start. And just make sure they're a little bit darker than what you have in the actual environment, because the water kind of sucks the color in a little bit, so it's not exactly the same color. And then I'm adding, these little ripples and things. Again, just a little hard brush, and I'm pressing very lightly and just trying to make like little swirls and things to make it look reflective. Now, One thing to be very careful when you do these, make sure they're horizontal to the ground, or the water might look like it's angled, and that can't happen. So yeah, make sure you do that. Now I'm coming to the end now, so I'm just messing around, see what I can do. When I'm towards the end, I generally stop looking at the reference and just see, how does it hold up by itself. And, I'm adding a bit more shadow where there's big rocks and things, and, where it would cast a shadow onto the water a little bit. Nothing that important, really. Once I start doing this and I start fiddling, I know I'm kind of at the end, and I should probably stop. We have some mistakes, like I said, back in the mountains. It's just not quite right, and I think the big rocks, the shadow side of the rock should be more blue and lighter. So that's another mistake, which annoys me a little bit. So, but I don't tend to go back and fix these things, because it's what is this painting for? The paint is for learning or whatever. So yeah, I think I quite like leaving my mistakes, and thinking, okay, if I look back in this and I compare it, I can still see what I did wrong, and I think that helps, rather than going back and fixing everything. It's good that I can see the mistakes now, but I don't need to make it perfect. What is that for? There's not really any point to that. So I noticed I missed the cloud, so I try to just do a quick version of that. I don't worry if it's too accurate, to be honest. And a bit of a Gaussian blue, which is always nice to smooth things out, especially when I'm using the select tool color fill thing, because it's very sharp. And I just add a bit more there. The nice thing about the cloud is it makes the mountains and the back stand out. I'm not sure it's a big deal, but anyway, that's kind of about it for this one. This was pretty challenging, to be honest. I had lots of bits to it. I learned a fair bit, and I made a good few mistakes there. But hopefully I won't make them so much in the next one, or something similar. So if you like this, give me a like and a sub, and I'll do more of these, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.